Welcome back to the Night Shift, your safe space for talking about UFOs, UAPs, NHI, disclosure, and everything else your friends, family, and coworkers are so sick and tired of hearing about. We're here, of course, to celebrate a very big day here at the Night Shift. So throw a second coat of wax on the DeLorean and top it off, because we're going to get this thing up to 88 miles per hour and see what happens. I'm talking, of course, about the release of the long-awaited, much-anticipated album, Night Shift, a Xander Jones Experience, music from the hit series, Volume 1. You just heard the track GFK. I'll let you figure out what GFK stands for. Xander, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey, yeah, I'm good. It's been a good day.
Is your phone blowing up still?
A little bit. Yeah. We've already got a second guest joining us as well already. But yeah, Daryl, if you wouldn't mind just muting yourself for a little bit, please. Yeah, it's been a great day. I've had a lot of great responses so far. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what happens over the next few days.
It's such an amazing album, and I know I talked it up, and I've been your hype guy for this for so long now. But guys, if you have not heard this already, it's available everywhere fine music is streamed. You can find it on iTunes, you can find it on YouTube Music, you can find it on Spotify, of course. Go there, listen to it. The sunglasses should come standard issue. You should get this in the mail when you play this album, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to figure out how to do that yet. So find your nearest pair of shades. That's how good this album is. You have to wear sunglasses to listen to it properly. I sent it out to a bunch of friends earlier this morning, and my phone has been blowing up. Everybody loves it. My mom and dad texted me. They're like, "This is amazing." Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. It's been awesome to get the response. And I was trying to describe it to somebody, and I was like, "You got to listen to it." It's like, he's like, "Well, what does it sound like?" And I said, "Well, if Pink Floyd wrote the soundtrack to Blade Runner, it wouldn't be this good, but you'd be close. You'd be on the neighborhood. Maybe not on the same block." So it's just spectacular. And I just want to say special thanks and a huge congratulations to Xander for pulling this off, man. I know it's been a ton of work, and you put a lot of time into it, and it really comes through.
Thank you very much. It does mean a lot. Honestly, a lot of the responses have been really heartwarming to read. I was a songwriter for a very long time, not necessarily being able to write music that I actually wanted to write. It was very much industry standard style music where you just kind of have to deliver what people ask for, whereas this has just been an exploration of what I wanted to do. So it's been great to be able to do that. It's been a really good experience. So yeah, if what I've just decided to make actually is something that people want to hear, then that's all the better.
Well, I think a lot of people want to hear it, and that's there's certainly no question about that. I want to let people know where they can go to support your work as a musician. If you want to continue to hear awesome music from Xander, what's the website where they can go?
So yeah, it's on all of the regular streaming platforms. I've also made, and as I say, this is obviously completely optional, but I have made a Ko-Fi page if anybody wants to just tip me in any way. The music does cost a little bit of money to make, but it's the time more than anything. But if anybody does want to tip me, you are more than welcome to. Absolutely no obligation to, of course. And also, if you don't have access to the streaming platforms, if you don't have Spotify, you don't have YouTube Music, Apple, or anything like that, you can download from the shop here. And it is free on the shop. There's an optional pay what you want kind of system built in here. And yeah, you can pay what you want, free or more, and yeah, you get access to all the files. You can just download them yourself and whack them on your MP3 player, whatever you would use. Yeah, that's how people can support me.
And please go there, and please do support his work, because when you hear this, you'll understand why I keep saying what I'm saying. It's pure, real human music by a real musician who actually cares about this topic, who's passionate about it, and you can hear it in every single track. It's that good. So he told me not to blow it up too much, but it's true. And, there's a lot of bad music out there. There's a lot of bad art out there. So it's important to support people who are working hard to create good stuff. And with that, I'd like to welcome all of you back to our final, I guess, Friday spectacular of the year. This is a very special episode because we have been catching a little heat since the last video dropped about the Forgotten Languages website and some of the claims that were made on the Forgotten Languages website about what may or may not actually be happening in New Jersey, in the skies of New Jersey, vis-a-vis this whole drone fiasco. That mystery continues to deepen. We seemingly know less and less with each passing day. And I think it's important to remember as we begin the show today that we don't know what we don't know. This stuff didn't just, all start yesterday. This whole conversation is part of a decades-long discussion that's been going on between a lot of different interested parties with different objectives and goals. So there can be NHI activity happening at the same time that there is some other government activity going on, and those two things often go hand in hand. So it's not unreasonable to expect that when we look up and try to figure out what's going on, it's going to be confusing and it's going to be weird and it's going to be hard to understand and hard to decipher. And no one person has all of the pieces of the puzzle. So as we explore this mystery and try to figure out what is going on, I thought it would be interesting to talk to someone who has a very special, unique set of skills that has been able to use those skills and that training to get some more information, get some more data about what it is that's actually going on. And I'm talking about remote viewer Birdie Jaworski. Birdie, thank you for carving out some time this week to join us. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'm definitely going to be downloading Xander's album the minute we're off. So.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. Please. And guys, if you go on YouTube and listen to it, give it a thumbs up while you're over there. Birdie Jaworski is a multifaceted professional based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. As a beekeeper, digital forensics expert, writer, and publisher, she brings a unique blend of skills and experiences to her work. Birdie holds a master's degree in digital forensics with a concentration in writing and is currently pursuing an advanced degree in artificial intelligence. She has tackled some interesting projects in the past, from starting an arts, culture, and community newspaper in northern New Mexican community to creating and editing Very Much Wow, the Dogecoin magazine. Birdie is the founder and director of ABQ UFOs, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the understanding, study, and disclosure of the UFO phenomenon. She believes that community involvement is crucial to the field of ufology. Through her leadership, ABQ UFOs aims to foster a collaborative environment where enthusiasts and researchers can come together to explore the mysteries of the universe. In her early career, Birdie, as Prue Calabrese, served as the vice president of the Farsight Institute before founding her own remote viewing enterprise, Transdimensional Systems. She has educated thousands globally, in the art of remote viewing. After dedicating over 2 decades to independent research and exploration, Birdie has returned to the public sphere to share and teach her innovative method known as transdimensional mapping, marking a new chapter in her extensive career. Birdie, it's so great to have you today. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. We can talk about anything you like.
We have, so this channel launched just over a year ago, and it's grown quite a bit since we launched it. And a huge part of that growth has been directly because we've shown an interest in remote viewing. And I think a lot of people have become aware of this term in the last few years, particularly with all of the activity around ufology and people learning about the history of it and following the history of people like Hal Puthoff and others. For those people who aren't familiar with it, who may not understand exactly what we're talking about when we say remote viewing, and they may conflate that with some like other concept of what psychic abilities might be, can you lay out in general terms, what is remote viewing and how does it work?
So in 1995, the government declassified the Stargate program, and it was all over the news at that time. And what they said was they spent over 2 decades, 20 years, and over $20 million taxpayer dollars to train soldiers to become psychic spies. And they worked with a number of researchers. Some were gifted psychics, some were researchers in parapsychology, and they developed a method by which literally any person on the planet could learn to become a psychic spy. And this method is pretty simple. It involves paper and pen, and you do these exercises that keep the left side of your brain occupied, because the left hemisphere is the more controlling hemisphere of your brain. It's that part of you that wants to know what's going on, that wants to be in control, that wants to name things. It keeps that part of your brain busy, while your right, more intuitive side can let loose with this incredible information, non-local information. So that's essentially what remote viewing is. And literally anyone can learn to do this. I've trained thousands of people over the years, and not a single person has been unable to learn this skill. Every single person learns it and is satisfied that they are getting really interesting, directly related, true information using just the power of their mind.
Can you explain a little bit more about non-local um, consciousness and information, how that process works? I think a lot of people maybe get lost at this idea of like, how can you reach out and get information from elsewhere and bring that back?
Well, that's the big question, because nobody knows. Researchers still are trying to figure out consciousness itself. But what you do is during remote viewing, and it's like other psychic processes. I think all of these things are on a continuum, but this is a learned methodology that is repeatable. And it's always done blind. So you don't know what the target is when you start the experience. You are given just a random set of coordinates, or just told there's something for you to remote view, and then it's revealed to you at the end. So in terms of like non-localness, you can access anything across the globe, anything on any other planet, any other galaxy. You can look at things far, far in our ancient past. You can look at things far, far into the future. And you get information, and it's not simply like automatic writing. You literally smell, taste, hear, see, and just simply know what's happening. You can even get into the minds of people or of non-human intelligence and find out what they're thinking, even perhaps have a communication with them if they are a telepathic species.
I guess the main thing that I wonder about personally is like, if you have access to so much information and so much data, how do you know what it is that you're looking at, and how do you stay oriented in that environment?
Yeah, the process allows you to start describing things, and you start building up a narrative. At the beginning of your remote viewing session, you start with an automatic doodle, and that's called an ideogram. And we have this natural language that's like inside of ourselves, where we kind of break down and understand the world around us. So, for example, if I asked everyone watching or listening right now to draw water that fast, like in a split second. Everyone draw water right now. Boom. Everybody would draw a wavy line. It's just part of how we understand the world. If I ask you to draw a mountain that fast, everybody would draw something that looks kind of like a mountain shape, an up and a down, might have a peak at the top, might be rounded, but it would look like a mountain. And so that's an ideogram. So you start by writing down the random numbers you're given, and then you whoop, do an automatic doodle, and then that tells you something about what's there. If your ideogram has an angle to it, it means there's a structure of some sort there, meaning like a building, something man-made. If it's a real crazy chaotic line, usually means there's something energetic happening there, like a bomb blast or a tidal wave. something like that. So you start on with low level data, and then you start collecting information that's more sensory based: the smells, the tastes, how hot or cold something is, how tall or short something is. And you start collecting this information and then building upon it. And by the end of your session, you've collected so much information that what it is starts to arise. And you can see, oh, I've got a building, I have people, I have this happening, that happening. I mean, say I gave you to remote view, without telling you what it was, Abraham Lincoln giving the Gettysburg Address. You might get that there's a person. Then you might get that there's a crowd. You might get the structure of the stage. You might feel that it's cold out because it was cold during that time when he was giving this speech. You might get the sense someone is speaking. And by the end, you'll have this really elaborately described scenario where you know it's a central political figure giving an important speech. You might even get, uh, you know, literal language from the speech. You might be able to identify Abraham Lincoln because he was a uniquely looking individual. And so that's how it works. You don't start by saying, "Oh, I'm here at a speech." No, you start the building blocks small with little snippets of information and let it form a narrative around you.
Um, what are some of the use cases, or maybe a classic case or two that where remote viewing has been used to find something that's been verified in the real world, if you will?
Yeah, there are numerous cases that you can find out there that the military psychic spies have done, where, they were looking at their adversaries, sent to look at different adversaries, and this information was used by their superiors, sent up the chain of command so that different kinds of things could happen. But there's all kinds of really interesting remote viewing out there that's been useful in the real world. I myself have worked with a team way in the past with transdimensional systems, and right now, my team is working on a case where we look for missing people, or we look for perpetrators. There's a number of remote viewers that have done this kind of work and posted their results online. There's all kinds of future predictions too that have been, come true, that remote viewers have talked about. Back in the day, back in the late 90s, I had done a session on the next terror attack on the United States, and I drew the Twin Towers and Statue of Liberty and two airplanes flying into the Twin Towers. And that was 3 years before 9/11.
Mm.
And that was posted on the internet and got a lot of attention at the time. But even just the drone thing happening, for example, the Future Forecasting Group, which is a collective of remote viewers out there, they talked about something happening in the sky with a militaristic, presence and maybe some non-human intelligence. They predicted that before all of this started. The Farsight Institute, still going since I was vice president many years ago. They're still going strong. And they also talked about there was going to be a big non-human intelligence presence in the skies happening in November. So there's so much out there, so many talented remote viewers doing absolutely incredible things. And I'm just excited to be part of it.
Is it fair to say that if you have multiple remote viewers looking at the same thing, the same event, that you can get a more higher resolution idea of what's going on there if you overlay that with maybe other sources of information, like an intelligence agency might do?
Absolutely. Having multiple remote viewers is always better for figuring out the real answer to something. I like working in a group the best. And I've been developing a group since I came back on the scene, and we're doing some cool work. But when you remote view something, you're always remote viewing it through your own personal perceptions and lens. Your background, your religious upbringing, how you were raised by your parents, your cultural conditioning, your education level, what you believe about the world. And it's always going to have that kind of a flavor to it. What you produce will have your flavor mixed in with it. And so it's good to have a number of remote viewers so that you can look at things more objectively. Also, some remote viewers are more visual. They're going to sketch more, and their sketches will look so much like what's there at the target. And some are more conceptual, and they'll just know what's happening, but they may not have a lot of sketches. And some are more emotional, and they connect with the emotional feelings of the people there, or animals, or aliens, or the place itself. And you put all of that together, and then you can build a full picture.
I think it's so fascinating that this is not only something that was well funded and studied intensely by the military and the intelligence agency of the United States, but also the Soviet Union, and that produced this whole training methodology that seems to have like real provable, tangible results in the real world. Do you believe it? We sometimes hear that, they discontinued all that research. They're not doing it anymore. They gave up on it because it doesn't work. At least if you look on Wikipedia, that's what it says. Do you think that's true?
No, of course not. Of course not. When they declassified Stargate, they said, yes, it worked to some degree, but not well enough to keep funding it. So they did admit success, but then they said they were just shutting it all down. Now you have to take into account all of their military psychic spies, military remote viewers had just reached retirement age, or were reaching retirement age. So they're about to be let loose upon the public. And, you know, of course they're still researching this. Of course they are. And there's multiple groups of remote viewers and different, arms of government or government adjacent type groups, black ops groups, defense contractors, you name it. I've remote viewed a bunch of them to find out what they're doing and how they're using, new science and new technology, because they have all the money behind them to figure out way more than what we can do as individuals at home. So yeah,
It's so amazing. It's just fascinating, the whole history of it, and the fact that it was Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff back at Stanford Research Institute that was began the most intense military research on this. I'm sure we have a lot of fans of Ingo Swann. I'm a fan of Ingo's work, and so it's always been something in the back of my mind. And I know Xander's a fan of remote viewing, and a number of people in our audience. So it just seemed like a natural thing to ask some remote viewers, or find someone who could look at the situation that's unfolding right now and try to shed some light on it. And it was when we were wondering about all that I came across your video that you did, where you did this whole session on the New Jersey drone situation. And I've watched it, and it's just, if you don't know what you're looking at, it can be very difficult to understand what the bigger picture is that you're describing there. We wanted to make this episode of Night Shift Live about figuring out the drone mystery, and particularly the drones that are not only in the United States, but the stuff that's going on in the UK. We have another guest that's going to be with us. He's actually in the green room right now, Liberty Wing UK.
Oh, wow.
Liberty, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thanks for joining us, friend.
Well. Half my head's missing off the computer, but
at least half of it's still there. That's what matters. Yeah. It's the important half. Liberty runs a YouTube channel and live streams footage from above Lakenheath Air Force Base in the UK, and he's been getting this amazing footage of drone activity above the base. And he's been on the show before, and we've been trying to figure out what it is that we're actually looking at. And we've put it to our audience. We've put it to members of our community who have military background and intelligence background. And we've tried to see if we can figure out what we are actually looking at when we look at all this stuff. So I wanted to have you guys here today to see if we could peek behind the curtain a little bit. And I'd like to start with Birdie on your session, and then we'll go to Liberty. When you did this session, can you explain what were you trying to figure out, and how did this feel to you in the moment when you were going through it?
Yeah, so, most remote viewing sessions are done blind, meaning you don't know what you're looking at, and it's revealed to you later at the end. or at some future date if it's an operational project. And in this case, someone gave me this to remote view. They told me they had a target and they felt that there was some urgency involved. And I was honestly thinking at the time, oh, it must be a missing person if there's urgency involved. So I kind of went in with that mindset. I'm going to be looking for a missing person. I've done so many of these kinds of cases. And so they just gave me a set of random numbers, which if I remember correctly, was 43170712. And so I began my remote viewing session with this, but I immediately got a structure and realized that something was floating, and started, exploring this through making some sketches. I in the system that I use, which is my own system that I've developed over the past 22 years, you use a huge piece of paper and you call it a map. And you use crayons and markers and colored pencils, because colors can tell you a lot about what's happening. And so I started by drawing first what looked like fan blades. And then I drew two colored circles, a green one and a red one. And I started exploring what these things might be. And the fan blades, after figuring out, well, it's attached to something, it's in the air, it's heavy, it's metallic. And I realized, oh, we're looking at a helicopter here. This is a helicopter. And then I started looking at the two circular things, and I got the strong sensation that what I was looking at was actually non-human intelligence. Now, as a remote viewer of almost 30 years, I have remote viewed all kinds of alien stuff, the crash at Roswell, all kinds of classic cases and little known cases, and just all kinds of stuff. So this felt non-human to me. I have a lot of experience with that. But it didn't feel familiar. Like, if you're looking at the gray aliens or the reptilians or what have you, those have a certain flavor. And this didn't have that flavor. It was really unusual, almost like an artificial intelligence, but it had a sentience to it. And I kept trying to draw something behind it. I wanted to draw that it had a shape, but I couldn't quite draw the shape because it didn't feel real to me. And I realized that what was happening here was whatever this was mimicking something else. And so I left that alone for a little bit and explored the helicopter some more, and then drew an unmanned craft that I figured out was like a legitimate drone, like a real drone. It was military or military adjacent drone. And so there were a number of these actual drones in the sky, a number of these helicopters in the sky, but there were more than the combined drones and helicopters, more of these other things in the sky. And I started drawing them all over my map. And then I drew a coastline and people in a city skyline, which was probably along the Hudson, in retrospect. But at the time, I'm just trying to figure it out. And then I realized, oh, I'm looking at those darn drones. That's what I'm looking at. And I really started diving in to the non-human intelligence aspect. And it had like this tiny, tiny center to it, this center of sentience that felt very artificial intelligence like to me, but not artificial intelligence as we understand it today. Now, who knows what's going on in secret labs, in corporations and in the government. I'm actually studying artificial intelligence, a high level of understanding of what's been publicly released or what's in development in certain institutions. But of course, the government could have something highly secret. But this just felt so far beyond what we could possibly create, because it truly was like a general artificial intelligence, truly had sentience, could express things and knew things, and was able to collect and assimilate data. And these things were going in and out of the water. They're going into the water, coming out of the water, and replicating in some way. So that's what I got in the first part. I did the session in 3 parts over 3 days, which is typical for me. I usually spend a few days on each session. And it wasn't until I was completely all done with part 3 that it was revealed to me what it was.
So it's interesting that you mention artificial intelligence, because I think in this community too, when we say non-human intelligence, it's the reflex is to think alien, right?
Right.
And sometimes, it's interesting to watch how fast artificial intelligence has advanced just in the last 3 years.
Yes.
And things that were impossible to imagine just 5 years ago are now like commonplace. If you can get to a cell phone, you can access this stuff. Do you get a sense, just a larger sense in general, that what is going on right now vis-a-vis this whole moment that we're having with aliens and non-human intelligence, is that somehow related to what's going on in the artificial intelligence world?
I think that there might be some connection, to be honest. Whatever this intelligence was, it seemed extraordinarily concerned with whatever's happening on this planet at this moment in time. I know that the military activity in the air, they were doing something, but they were also kind of focused on whatever these non-human intelligence creations were. And I think that it's possible that we're at this crossroads in time right now. Humanity really is. We're facing potential nuclear annihilation there, with Russia posturing, the Russia-Ukraine war going on, and NATO, the United States involvement. There's been a lot of movement of nuclear weapons. There's been a lot of talk about what potentially might happen. I think the government's extremely concerned about some kind of nuclear exchange. So I think that that's one part of this crossroads. The other certainly is artificial intelligence, because we're at a point now in time where we're starting to give up a lot of our humanity for technology. If you just look, go out into the world, take a walk. And if there's anyone even going for a walk outside, they're probably looking at their phone. You go anywhere you go out to eat, people are on their phones. They're giving up this community, this interpersonal relationship, all of this for spending more time with technology, taking in more technology. Transhumanism is growing larger, that whole area of interest. And so I think we're at this precipice where we have to make decisions about who we want to be as a people on this planet. Who are we? Who do we want to grow into? And there might be concern, I think, by some of these non-human intelligences of different kinds, as I think many kinds have been visiting our planet, or perhaps exist on this planet simultaneously with us. And so I think that we're at this precipice where we have to decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to go down this pathway and give up the rest of humanity towards technology, like kind of like Wall-E, the movie, the Pixar movie, or are we going to learn to harness it and use it to solve a lot of our deepest issues, like hunger and housing and medical help and things like this? Right now, I think a lot of these things are being weaponized and used in ways that are fill people's pockets, the 1%, and that also used for dastardly deeds in terms of weaponization and control. But we do have an opportunity to harness this for good. But so I think they are interested in this.
With that, you mentioned nuclear weapons, and I think that's always a good opportunity to bring in Liberty, who has been covering this event from the UK as it's unfolded for a while now, and kind of recently became the center of some controversy because his YouTube channel was taken down for a period of time. So, Liberty, you've been watching this unfold for a while now. What have you seen since the last time that you were on? How has this situation evolved, and are we seeing more weirder activity? And what can you tell us? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, it's been relatively quiet in the UK. We've not seen anything like what you guys have got, whether that's a good thing here or a bad thing. But I've been over there loads of times. I have seen lights. I've seen, and sorry, I'll keep looking up and just thinking my camera's in a bit of a weird place. But yeah, I've been over there. I went last night. I saw a couple of lights over there. Monday, and I think it was. I saw a couple of lights. Nothing like what we saw before. But that first time when I was streaming, there was lights absolutely everywhere, and you could hear what they were doing. They were flying around after these things. They were evading them, and obviously late that night, my YouTube channel got taken down, which actually is really strange because someone downloaded my video from that night, and he met me at Lakenheath last night. and his channel got took down because he posted my video.
Wow.
So I found that out last night that he'd re-uploaded my video, and his channel got taken down. So that's a bit of a weird one.
That is weird.
Yeah. So he asked YouTube to put his back up. He got his channel back, but not the video. So yeah. So I learned that last night. I hadn't had time to tell you, but last night I was there until quite late. I was with another channel doing a video, and he spent the evening with me. And we did see a few lights. He's going to send me some footage that he took, and he had a lot better camera to see in the dark with, and he could make out lights in the distance. So hopefully we're going to have some more footage for you, and we'll share it with you.
So that video that got taken down on both your channels, what was in that video you think that made people take it down?
Do I dare tell you on your channel? Do I dare have your channel go down? Because
could you describe it in general terms?
Just what the planes were talking about.
Gotcha.
So there were some choice words that I probably daren't say right now. I can tell you off air, obviously. When I didn't actually know at the time, someone told me about what was being said. I wasn't, because my radio was off. My stream caught someone else's radio, and I went down and got my radio and put my earphones in. I started listening to what they were saying, and I couldn't believe what they were saying. But previously to that, someone had actually caught someone's radio, and what they were saying was probably, it was probably they didn't want no one to hear it. So that's where
unbelievable.
Yeah. I didn't know that night, and I didn't know the last time I spoke to you half the stuff, but yeah, listening back now, I've still got that stream. I'm not going to put it up.
Wow, I don't blame you. That's breaking news then.
Yeah.
Wow. You heard it here first, folks.
And I heard some other information about the light in the sky. I heard a big bang that night. I don't know what it was. I didn't see it. But someone said, this may be completely separate thing, but someone said one was shot down in the local village. Apparently she's gone very quiet, and no one's heard from her since. So
I remember watching one of your videos and hearing that, and somebody off camera was like, "Did you hear that?" And I think you responded, "Is that the one you're talking about?"
Yeah.
It was just you could hear it on the video. It's faint and it's off to the side almost, but you can definitely make out there's a sound and somebody reacts to it. Yeah. That's so strange. I mean, I think that's, real quick before we go on to the next question here. Everybody watching, if you could, please, if you like what you're seeing and you like what you're hearing, hit that thumbs up, like the stream, boost the stream. YouTube really likes it when you guys like the stream. So please do. And that'll get more eyeballs on it, and it'll boost it up in the algorithm. And that really, really helps. We've got about 530 live viewers right now. Let's see if we can double that. I think we can do that. Come on, guys. We could do that. All right. So the big debate, I think, within at least our audience here for the last few days has been, is what we're seeing around the world all related? Is it all the same thing? I guess one part of this debate is that. Or are these separate events that are just happening at the same time? And are they, is it non-human intelligence doing something and we are responding to that? Or is this something else? This is just maybe our own government doing some kind of test or doing some kind of war game or something like that. And it just appears very strange to us because what we're seeing in the sky may be new weaponry or new technology that we haven't seen before. And so I've noticed in the chat and in our messages on the last couple of videos, that's been kind of where people's minds are at. Liberty, what is your take on what you've seen, what you've heard, just your vibe? Like, what are you picking up from the people that you're around? If you just had to, like, give me the temperature of the room, like, what do you think is going on?
It's 50-50. To be honest with you, I had a guy turn up last night. He's been messaging me a lot. He may be watching. He's been messaging me. He's asking me lots of information, and he's the guy that had his channel taken down. He's got videos and information from everywhere. And he was telling me all sorts last night, and he truly believes it's they're proper UAPs. He was saying to me, I've not seen nothing close enough to see what they were. I can see lights in the sky. Nothing like what you guys have got. You guys have got really close up stuff. I've not been able to get that. I've been able to get distant lights, and I've been able to hear what they're saying, and they're definitely responding to them in a way that, you know, they didn't know what they were, unless it's a big cover up, and they know exactly what it is. But I don't know.
So
I really can't.
You feel comfortable saying that, like, the attitude is they're nervous about it.
Yeah,
is that fair?
I think so. I definitely the consensus was the first night we saw everything happen, and for a couple of nights after, it appeared that they were nervous about what was in the sky.
Certainly, if they took down one of your channel and somebody else's video, they must have been concerned a little bit.
Yeah. But whether they've done that because we're filming something sensitive and they don't want us to see it, and they didn't realise we were streaming. But then again, a couple of nights later, I was streaming, and they asked me, well, they said, we'd rather you didn't stream. And I asked them why, and they let me carry on. So it didn't really make any sense. That didn't really make no sense to me. If they didn't want my videos to air, then why say carry on?
None of this makes any sense. It's got everybody so wound up tight. I don't know what to make of it myself. I know that I go back and forth on it. I've gone back and forth on it twice in the last few days. Guys, what do you think in the chat? What do you think's going on? Let us know in the chat. Don't be shy. And we have another guest joining us. I'd like to maybe this guy can help us out. This is an expert on mystery from Area 52, Chris Ramsey's house. Chris, welcome to the night shift. It's good to have you back, man. Oh, you're muted. Are you there? Is it the deep state got him?
We may have to come back to him.
All right.
Hey,
let's go.
Hey,
how's everybody doing?
We're doing great, man. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. I've just been sort of really enamored, sort of listening to all of this. So, and I was eating outside, so I didn't want to bug you guys with my mic. Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me, and thanks for including me in this conversation. This is fascinating stuff.
You've been watching this like everybody else. What's your take on what's going on? I mean, we're just trying to get to the bottom of it. Have you solved it yet?
Have I solved it yet? I would love to be the one to solve it, that's for sure. But I think we're all kind of on the same page. I don't know if I can really add anything to the conversation other than, my own personal interpretation from what I've been consuming. And I think most of that leads me to believe that this might be more than one thing. I think that's safe to say. I think a lot of people really agree on that. Anybody else pushing forward one particular specific agenda or dogma, I think we should be weary of that. And I think we should really keep ourselves open to this being more than one thing. And we've heard everything from, dirty bombs to things around nuclear silos or sensitive military areas to even hobbyists perhaps pranking and hoaxing people right now, which I don't think is out of the equation entirely. I think when you have this much attention on anything, I think there are certain bad actors that are going to get into the mix and that are going to want to go viral on TikTok. I don't think that's such a stretch. So, it's as these things are unfolding, couple that with the incredible CGI that exists, the incredible access to this powerful AI that exists, to the attention-seeking people, to the government, to all these different variables, it becomes this melting pot of confusion, and rightfully so. So it's getting trickier by the day to really, put a finger on what exactly is going on. And I think on top of all of that, what's even more unfortunate is that we don't know who to turn to for the truth. And so we're all forced to really speculate. We're all forced to give in our 2 cents. As crazy as some of these, speculation might seem, no one else is giving us a choice right now. So I think, having this discourse and having these conversations is very healthy. I think it helps us digest a lot of the information that's out there, and also helps us maybe, to broaden our horizons on what exactly this might be. And yeah, from my perspective, I think it's a multitude of things, but I'm definitely not ruling out, some on some level, NHI. I'm not ruling that out whatsoever. I do think that those things have been known to pop up during, these certain uncertain times, I should say. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit with it.
You make a great point, and it does feel like, I mean, we've talked about it on this channel a lot. I don't know, to what extent this is your belief, but certainly internally we've discussed how it does feel like we're kind of on a razor's edge right now. It feels like this moment is very precariously balanced on whatever is going to happen in the next few years. And I know people say that all the time, but it just seems like maybe it's just this generation having grown up with all the different one emergency after another. You just keep watching them happen, and eventually you're like, if they get any bigger, the planet cracks in half. At some point, we have to figure out like how to turn this back and dial it back the other way. And I know that certainly in the UFO community, there is an idea that, and even Danny Sheehan has talked about this recently, that there's going to be some kind of an attempt to intervene and save us from ourselves, or at least hopefully there might be something like that. And that's if we're optimistic. It's also important what you said about the idea that this isn't happening in a bubble. It's not like it's all happening in its own UFO. It's not just UFO stuff happening by itself in isolation. It's like part of this huge information data sphere that's got all these different players in it that are all doing their own different things, that all have different goals and objectives, and they're all trying to manipulate the public opinion. And so it is really hard to right yourself in a space like that and understand like what's up, what's down. That's a really great point. Birdie, as a remote viewer, when you you said this assignment came to you, it was a random assignment, right? This was you didn't have any data to go on. You just had random numbers, right?
I was just given random numbers.
And
Just
so
numbers.
when you go into this, how do you make sure that you go in clean and you're not bringing any of the clutter of the news and things that you've seen on TV and whatever into that session?
Yeah, once I start a session, I'm generally just so focused on exploring. I want to figure out this mystery. Every session is completely a mystery to me, completely. And, I had been following the drone news before. I did these sessions on December 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So, the drones had been going on for a couple of weeks at that point, and I was aware of them, but I didn't have a strong opinion. I thought there might be some, non-human intelligence activity, but I also thought maybe this is just a military testing of some new technology. And people, I think, were just starting to talk about potentially, these drones searching for some kind of nuclear material. So, there were a few theories out there. But when I went into the session, I initially thought I was going to be looking for a missing person. But that was quickly erased because I started getting technology immediately. And I was so engrossed in it that that I didn't even think about the news, even when I realized I was looking at the drones, which is, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour into the session, I realized, oh, this is the drone thing. But I was so interested in it because I had gotten something I would have never, ever in a million years expected. This really strange artificial intelligence, like non-human intelligence, that had sentience, that was communicating. It gave a message to the pilot on a helicopter. There was clear government or government adjacent interaction with these things, trying to figure out what they are, even trying to take them down, that was unsuccessful. And so I was getting all this interesting data that I hadn't thought about before, or that I hadn't seen others talk about before. This idea of a pinpoint, like a elemental almost consciousness that could create these shapes around it, whether it was an orb, whether it was a drone, mimic, or an airplane mimic, helicopter mimic. It was just fascinating to me. And I really was like lost in it. I was just really excited. and scared at first, or a little unsettled. Scared isn't the right word. It felt unsettling to me because it was so new, and I knew that it was real. When you remote view something that is completely outside of your frame of reference, it opens your Overton window just a little bit wider.
Do you get the sense, or did you walk away with any idea of what the intent behind this event is, or what different groups are part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I got the sense that whatever these non-human intelligence things are, that this was happening in other places, that it seems to be increasing. They were replicating in some way. They were collecting information and then sending that information like to the whole collective, which would then like be upgraded, so to speak. It's why it felt like artificial intelligence to me. So that we have this going on, but we also had this military activity going on, which seemed to have its own whole thing. They were doing some kind of maneuvers. I don't think that these maneuvers were looking for, I didn't get anything about them looking for any nuclear activity. There was just no nuclear anything in the sessions. I don't think that was part of it, but there was some kind of military activity going on with helicopters, drones, unmanned aircraft of some kind. But they also were watching and trying to get information from whatever these non-human intelligence objects, or whatever you want to call them. They were trying to collect information. They were testing anti-drone technology to see if they could take them down. Didn't work. And they were getting, they were sending messages back and forth to, their higher ups. I even, at one point in the third part of my session, I drew a guy who was like maybe a military general or somebody high up on the military food chain, but not like a full bird colonel or something, but somebody high up there. And he was in a building that had 5 sides, maybe the Pentagon, or that might have been just me telling myself this is military or your Department of Defense related, and he was underground. That I knew for sure. And there were people watching on screens what was happening. And he had with him a scientist who was also a military guy, but had a big science background, also background in linguistics. And they seemed to be trying to decode something that involved a frequency that they felt might have been a message. So it was just fascinating. I don't know.
If you don't mind me interrupting just ever so slightly, I watched all 3 of those remote viewing sessions. They were fascinating. I've unfortunately been bedbound the last 2 days, so I have had nothing to do other than just ingest all of this stuff. And your videos have actually been quite easy to listen to. Like when you're really unwell, it can be quite difficult to choose to listen to something and stuff. But
Right.
Your videos have actually been really easy to listen to. What I found interesting, and I don't know if this is some weird coincidence or not. You mentioned that gentleman in the Pentagon. Let's be real. It's pretty clear. It seems to be the Pentagon, at least.
Yeah, I think it is the Pentagon.
Yeah. You mentioned he was Mormon, and at the same time, and this does feel like a very heavy coincidence. There was and I'm a Reddit rat. There was a post on Reddit of Stephen Greer's Dead Man's Switch post that was apparently leaked. Apparently it was leaked a few years ago, but it was posted yesterday as well. And I read the whole thing yesterday. It was 30-something pages long, but I read the whole thing. And he talks about a deep infiltration of what are effectively Mormons in the intelligence community, which after listening to your... What?
I just said, whoa, I'm getting goosebumps.
Oh, sorry.
Are you talking about the Collins Elite? Is this the Collins Elite?
I don't know if the Collins Elite are specifically Mormon or not. Chris is nodding along. Maybe he knows.
I just know that I've also been noticing this quite a bit. I read a document recently on a video which was about this alleged whistleblower that came forward on Reddit and he had secondhand, knowledge of these projects ongoing. He said a lot of things that were really interesting and that sort of coalesced with previous stories and alleged leaks. But one thing he said that stood out to me was that the recruiting on these sort of Mormon campuses were pretty prevalent because of so many reasons. One, there's no drugs or alcohol if you're a Mormon. My managing team is based in Utah. They're all Mormon, and they're like the straightest edge people you'll ever meet. Like they just want to, have a family, do business, and go hiking, and like that's it. It's like pretty straight and narrow. That on, you couple that with their belief system. And they also believe in sort of sort of more than one form of intelligent life. And so it doesn't, it's not at odds with their core belief system as well. So it does make a lot of sense that they would turn to this group of people in order to keep this secret, as opposed to going with someone, when finding out about NHI or aliens or UFOs that might conflict with their religion or their core belief system. That might be a danger, it might be a red flag. So you're definitely looking for patriotic people, but you're also looking for people who are trustworthy and who don't go off the deep end, on benders on the weekend. So, it only leaves this small group of people to choose from. So I'd be really interested in, more people following that up, or even looking for more whistleblowers to come forward from that group. I think that's a very, very interesting thing.
That's a really great point. I have never heard anybody say that. That is really interesting.
Yeah, and he was a really nice guy. I mean, he had this like just gentle flavor, like a gentle spirit kind of a person, and just doing his job. And he was just tasked with this. He had to figure these things out. And he was thinking about his religion. And I was kind of fixated on his religion for a bit there in the session because it was so intriguing to me. I mean, I grew up Catholic. And so, this was not like that kind of religion. And so I was trying to figure it out. And yeah, that's really interesting. And that makes a lot of sense.
It speaks to a larger point about, which I think we'll eventually get to as a global community, which is like, how do you square the reality of this when it becomes really real, like for you? And like as experiencers have this whole other thing that they can like look to and go, I don't need disclosure, I've experienced it myself. But what happens when 8 billion people experience something all at the same time? And what do you go back to? What framework do you rely on when this is happening for really the first time to our whole society? And it just seems like it's going to be really messy. It's going to be difficult for people to grapple with. And I guess, as you pointed out, Chris, it seems like within maybe the larger program, you would want, exactly like you said, you'd want to tap people from a community that almost self-selects for those traits. That's a really fascinating point.
And it's nothing new. Like there's been a great interest in getting people, especially from BYU, into intelligence in 3-letter agencies. I mean, look back. You can look as far back as like the Cold War. They're recruiting, and there's military bases there. This is in the right part of the world, I feel like, as well, where perhaps you have these underground bases around there in Utah. You got all these sightings. You got these historical events that have taken place there in terms of like ufology. I mean, it feels like Utah would be a hub. I mean, you also what is it? Hill Air Force Base that's there as well. Like so, you've got some really interesting. It's just too perfect. It's in the right part of America, and it seems like it's the right kind of people for the job. Like, I mean, it seems a little obvious even, actually.
I guess it's just it's such a fresh, to my mind, it's a fresh way of thinking about it. Like, how do you build, but it's such a cool line of thinking, because it's like, how would you build that team? How do you start with, you start with an impossible task, like take something that is from another world and then make it into something you can use. And it's like, well, at least with the Manhattan Project, they kind of knew where they were trying to get to. They had like an end point that they could write in an equation and get there. But this is like, you're working the other direction. You don't even know how far this thing goes. Where do you go to get the team? And how do you get the people who are going to be able to psychologically gird themselves against the massive weight of what they're dealing with and what they're looking at and the implications? That's just a great, I've never heard anybody point that out, but that's such a huge part of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of recruitment happening in these Ivy League schools as well. We know that, like, even if you look back at Stargate, when they did their original testing with these, when they found the natural psychics and then broadened their horizon, well, they went for Mensa level geniuses. They went for intelligence officials. They went to Ivy League schools and the military. They're really honed in on gathering the best and brightest minds, to recruit for these 19 intelligence agencies, which is a lot, by the way. That's a lot of intelligence agencies for any country. Yeah. But, they need a lot of people to
for
fill
a country
this
that doesn't have as much intelligence as it would like to think it.
Yeah, I can't say I'm Canadian. I can't.
You're off.
I can't comment.
You're off the
hook. But that's, it seems like that would just be like a natural sort of path you would at least explore. And like I said, if you're in that part of the world, I mean, it's a very close-knit community, the Mormons. They're very family oriented. The Church of Latter-day Saints their faith is extremely strong. Someone just commented Green Street's an ex-Mormon too. So there you go.
I didn't know. That's news to me. There's so many different directions to take this in. How do you guys think this hits? Do you? Well, let me back up. Do you think that? And this is just an open question for anybody, whoever wants to jump in. Are we going towards a natural endpoint for this? Are we going to get to some kind of conclusion in our lifetime? Let's just say. Do we find out what's going on? Do we have contact? Or is this just going to continue on with this constant cat and mouse game that just never seems to end?
I think it's going to lead to actual disclosure by the President of the United States getting out there and saying that we are not alone. Now, I don't know exactly how much of the truth that we're going to be told if that happens before, as they call it, catastrophic disclosure. Catastrophic disclosure, would kind of lay more cards on the table. But I do think we are leading up to that point. If you just look back at the whole soft disclosure process since 2017, I think that from the get-go, from 2017, the New York Times above the fold article talking about the Navy pilots, the tic-tac gimbal go fast videos, everything seems to spring from that point. Lou Elizondo's coming out, all of the various whistleblowers, the congressional hearings, and Congress people coming out and talking. I think that this has been a deliberate disclosure effort by the powers that be to start bringing us up to speed on what this is, so that when Big D disclosure happens, everyone has been blasted with it enough that they don't freak out. So I think we are headed to that point, and I believe it's going to happen within the next 4 years.
Really? You think that soon?
Yes.
Liberty, Chris, what do you guys think? Xander?
Go ahead, Xander.
Oh, me? Okay. I put myself on screen because I have a... It's a question for Birdie, because I've never spoken to like a seasoned remote viewer, and having watched your videos, I mean, wow, they're incredible as an outsider, as somebody who's never remote viewed before. What you've said that all of this could potentially be the build up to the Big D disclosure, or whatever you said. You're reportedly tapping into this. So what is that part of whatever this is that is so big, that's so difficult to understand and so difficult to reveal? What do you think is... And it's a hard question to even verbalize. I'm trying. What do you think is the core central point to all of this? Is it... because I get the feeling that it's not just the fact that it's aliens. I don't think it's just aliens. 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, I thought it was just aliens. And even 5 years ago, I could have just said, yeah, it's just aliens. But now I'm like, is it interdimensional? Is it like some sort of religious aspect? You tap into this. So what do you really believe that all of this is? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I'll answer anything. I think it's a combination of things. And I think the reason for such a long cover up for, 75, 80 years of strict governmental cover up on all this is because it's so many different things going on, so many things that have happened. I believe that our DNA was tampered with in our ancient past that helped build us into the kind of creatures that we are today. I think that was alien involvement of some kind. I think that we have some species, or whatever you want to call them, beings that live in our planet or on our planet, under the oceans, perhaps maybe under the earth in some places. I think that we also have interdimensional type beings that come in and out. I think that there's way more than one kind of species, that it's numerous kinds. That's why the one in my drone session kind of freaked me out a little bit, because it was new to me. But I think that we have so many different things going on here. And let's not forget the abduction phenomenon, where thousands upon thousands of people report being abducted at night and having medical procedures done, and maybe giving birth, being the parent of a hybrid baby. I mean, there's so many things that once the government says we're not alone, all of this becomes kind of a free for all, asking all these questions. Well, our citizens are being abducted, or wait a minute, if we were created, then what about what I was told in my religion? It just opens up so many cans of worms. And it also brings up the whole idea that, well, the government kept this covered up for so long. And how did they do that? Through intimidation, through all kinds of very serious threats, and through literally killing people, as David Grush admitted to. I mean, not that he did it, but that he admitted that was part of what's happened. He mentioned that in one of the congressional hearings. And so opening this up, simply coming out and saying we are not alone, means that we start to question the government just generally, not just about the UFO phenomenon as well, and all of these things, but also about everything else that they tell us. I think that we're starting to see this now, just with the whole drone situation, where it's clear they're not giving us a straight answer. They've changed their narrative so many times now throughout the drone scenario, and people are really getting fed up with this. You can see it on the news when they interview citizens in New Jersey, these mayors, these poor mayors who are just local officials having to deal with high-tech, God knows what, flying feet over their citizenry's homes. I mean, they're not equipped to answer these questions, and they're starting to really get pissed off at the government. And so I think that, just coming out and saying we are not alone is going to topple, at least part of this house of cards. So, yeah.
Liberty, Chris, do you have anything you want to add?
I'm not sure what it is, but I've never seen anything like it before. All the years I've spotted planes and stuff, I've not seen. They fly different as well. So, but I just want to see one close. If I could just capture one close, I saw an outline of what looked like a drone as a military drone. The more I've looked at the footage and tried to brighten it up, that looks more like something that's human made, that's flying around the base. But that was a few days after the events I saw. So whether that's something they've put up to have a look at what's going on, but there's been lots of rumours about all sorts of things coming in there at the moment, and there's been special forces in there. I mean, why would they be there? I just don't get what, there's so many rumors. It's just hard to believe anything at the moment.
Is there a sense among people in the community that you deal with on the day-to-day basis that you're kind of working on this? Are you getting a sense from people that there's like weirdness in the air? Are they kind of creeped out by it?
Yeah, I mean, there's one of my subscribers is on the channel now. I hope you don't mind, but he's one of my admins on my channel, and he lives right close to the base, and he's seeing weird stuff. And I don't think he was a believer to start with, but I think he is now. I think he's seen stuff that he can't explain.
It's such a strange thing to think about. Like there's good. I've often said on this channel, I'm fond of wargaming this idea of like, what is it going to be like on the day? There's going to come a day and it's just going to happen. And on that day, it's going to be like, it's going to click. We're going to hit like the 100th monkey or like 51%, or we're all going to see the same thing enough that we're going to go, oh, okay, today's the day. I just am convinced that we're going to reach that point. And it's weird to think about because you wouldn't know really what you're looking at first. And it would probably be a lot like this. It would be very confused, and it would be like just weird, and everybody would be saying different things about what they're seeing, and we wouldn't really be sure what we're looking at. And then there would be a period of confusion that would just go on, and then eventually we would hopefully get to some kind of like clarity on it. There's a hypothesis that's been floating around, and I'd like to get Chris, I'd like to get your opinion on this as someone who in your other career is an expert in illusion and misdirection and spectacle. This idea that maybe we're all being subjected to some kind of giant experiment right now to test exactly that. Like, how would people freak out? How would they freak out? What do you make of this idea? Have you heard of this? Is there a sense, do you have a sense one way or the other if that might be what we're looking at? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think any opportunity to study the public's response by the government is a good opportunity, whether they're the ones who created this narrative or not. I think they are taking notes. Again, there's all these intelligence agencies are getting paid a lot of money to, to make something of this, to spin it in some way, right? I'm frankly surprised. Like here's the only thing the one thing that unsettles me is we're not given a reason. Normally, when the government's behind something, they'll shill out some BS reason that we can all sort of deny. And they haven't really given us that. And that's what's caused this confusion and the frustration. But it also is quite alarming, because we're so used to them being 10 steps ahead, and they've got their cover stories already. They're, oh no, we're testing this new technology, and who knows, maybe this will all come out when this dies down. But it seems to me like they don't have that right now. And there is some sense of panic.
It does feel reactionary.
It does, yeah.
Planned, yeah.
Exactly. And that's, and I don't want to be the one to sound alarms, but that's what makes me feel like there might actually be some type of imminent situation that they're dealing with. That's just my gut check, where, and I know that the idea of like some hidden nuke has been thrown out, which is totally fine, but there are other means of, really hurting a country from the inside using different weapons of mass destruction, whether it's biological, whether it's chemical. You don't always have to go radiation, to destroy, or it could even, it could just be something along those lines. And that for me fits this particular narrative as to why they wouldn't want to give us an answer, because I think they're scrambling to find something right now. That's what it seems like to me. Like they're scrambling to find something right now. These drones, if they're operated by the government, drones don't usually have like infrared technology on them, these particular drones. So they have sensors. So what are they sensing for? They're sensing for something, right? And it's in particular areas. So they're working on intel. Now I would understand why this would be kept under the tightest amount of secrecy, because should they have some information which will lead to them finding some type of imminent threat, the last thing they want to do is alert the public of that, because it might jam up all the signals. It might make things worse. It might make their search take longer, which could in turn, we could lose lives because of that. So from an intelligence standpoint, I do understand the silence if they are looking for a threat. That is the only thing that really fits that angle for me. Now, if it is a big threat, there might be cause for these NHI to start coming out of the waters and hanging out. Like, this also helps me make sense of that. And so I think there might be multiple things at play, but I do think there is something serious going on. And I do believe that there are a very small group of people within the government, not outside, not, secret black projects within the government, that know what's going on, and they understand the severity of it and why they shouldn't, leak that right away, and deter their efforts to finding this problem. That's like my gut check.
You point out a really interesting observation, which is it would be so easy for them to just make up an excuse. It would cost nothing, and it would calm people down. You could just say, "Oh, that's it's weather drones. It's some kind of weather test, or standard training thing that we're doing." And then
you'll get it. You'll get your answer. The second these drones go away, where they find the threat or whatever the reason they go away, is the second whatever answer they're going to give you is BS. Like, that answer, expect that. We all expect that. The second they come out and be like, just gigs up, guys. Sorry about that. We were just actually running some, PSYOP or whatever. Like, whatever they say after that is, I believe, not to be trusted. Whatever's going on right now, they can't talk about, though.
That's just such a weird thing, too, right? Like, why wouldn't you just make up an excuse? Why not just say anything?
I think because if something happens that's terrible,
then you've gone on record saying it's something else, and you got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're saying it's not a threat. So if it came out and became something terrible,
well, they're saying they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't see it as a threat. They don't perceive it as a threat yet. They don't know. They're in very sort of open waters with this. They don't want to commit to anything. And the second they lock it down, which I firmly believe, if there is a problem, if there's a country in the entire world that will lock this down, the amount of dollars that are poured into military assets in the United States is actually insane. They're going to find this. They're going to nip it in the butt. But until then, I think they're kind of this. And this might have been, embarrassingly, they might have received this news probably a while ago and not acted on it. Through some type of channel. And that's why they're like, picking up the pieces now.
It is funny to watch them in press conferences twist themselves into knots over this and try to, how much airtime they can burn up just talking about nonsense without actually directly addressing the questions that are being asked. And it's like, you watch it, and 30-minute press conference, and 28 minutes of it is just like them going on and on about what types of drones there are and how many people fly drones. And it's so silly to watch. I guess the big question on everyone's mind is this, or could this be the beginning of the event that has been rumored in the UFO community for, at least as far back as I've ever looked? It seems like there's always been somebody saying that soon, this big event is going to happen. You won't be able to miss it. No one's going to miss this. When you see it, you'll know. And then everything's going to be different. You talked about, Birdie, you mentioned abductees earlier, which is a weird part of this conversation. It's the dark side of the street. Nobody wants to go there right now. It's very strange how few people talk about that. And I want to go there in just a minute. But we have so many cases of people who have been abducted or have had experiences or encounters who have said something is coming. There's something they've been prepared to do. They've been told they're going to do something. They don't know what it is. We can't figure out what it is, but they've got this instruction. It's been sort of like programmed into them. And this goes through Jim Sparks comes to mind, Bud Hopkins, any of his books, or John Mack. This just comes up again and again and again. You've got people as recently as John Ramirez, the former CIA agent who was on podcast UFO about 2-3 years ago, I think. And he said that 2027 was the year. He gives this year. And he said, and he bases that off of something Lou Elizondo says. And he says, well, Lou says, 5 years. Go get a hobby for 5 years, and then when 5 years is over, this will all be done. And then he extrapolates as 2023. So he said, 2027 is when this is supposed to go down. And then he goes on. He doesn't just leave it there, but in the same interview, he goes on and he says, I guess the word got out in the government that they're going to show up, and they just have to on-ramp all these people, or there's going to be some splaining to do. And they're trying their best to figure out how to get this in front of people in a way that doesn't cause a catastrophe. And I think that if it were just that, then we could probably say, well, you know, people say crazy things all the time. But then you've got Carl Nell at the Soul Symposium giving that presentation, and he's got a slide spelling out the phases of disclosure. And I think 2030 or 2035, he has us in a post-disclosure world, according to that chart. And this is available online. People can go look this up. So it definitely seems like a framework is at least set up in the minds of the UFO community that there is a pending event somewhere in the future, probably closer than it is farther away. And we can't quite put our finger on when it's going to happen, but it might be happening soon. And this definitely has that kind of smell coming off of it. I wonder, what do you guys think? And this is for Birdie and Chris. What's your take on the abduction phenomenon and these types of stories and this type of rumor that's been going around forever? Do you think that there is something to it, and might we be actually seeing the beginnings of it now?
I do think there's something to it. And it's not just John Ramirez. Others have given similar dates. Even the New York Times journalist Leslie Kean has even said her sources have told her 2027.
And Chris Bledsoe.
And Chris Bledsoe has also said around 2026. Yeah, 2026, I think, for him. And I don't know what the date might be, but there's also all of these rumors about the James Webb Telescope perhaps having seen something coming our way. There's enough out there. You know, you start putting those pieces together and you look at that soft disclosure starting in 2017. Why would they have to get us ready? Why now? Why even bother with the disclosure process now? They've kept it under wraps, and they could have kept calling all of us crazy and nuts and ignoring that all this was happening. I think that they had to get in front of it. They had to, that they didn't have a choice because something is going to happen. Now, exactly what that is and when that's going to be, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is, but maybe this is the beginning of a more open contact. Maybe something is going to present itself in some kind of way that it'll be completely obvious to everybody on the planet. I think that's a real possibility here. Just looking at all the evidence, all of the messages from contactees, abductees going back decades at this point, but they seem to be kind of ramping up a little bit. And now all of our more modern seers, Chris Bledsoe and some of these others, and now we're headed into potentially James Webb Telescope seeing a mothership headed toward Earth. But
it feels like there's a build, right? It feels like we're in a movie, and it's that now we're in the part of the movie where they cut to the TV and the person's flipping channels, and it's just news heads going, people don't know what's going on. The president doesn't have a clue. I'm not going to my house this weekend. I'm staying away. Exactly. And then it's like 5 minutes after this is when all hell breaks loose. It's so strange. Chris, what's your vibe on this? Like, what's your take on the abduction situation? Do you think that's something that we should look at, and how does that fit into what's going on now?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think that's the ultimate question. I think, but you know, I think, you know, Randall Nickerson even talked about this, where we're not ready for that conversation yet as a collective. I think we are here. I think we're having these conversations. They're very important to have, and I think these experiencers and abductees are very brave for coming forward and talking about these stories, because they're being ostracized in their own communities and their own families, and it's very, very tough to talk about. So people like Chris Bledsoe do set precedent for a lot of these people to come forward and talk about their stories, which I'm seeing more of on my side, and I think it's really valuable. Now, you look at the work of John Mack or Bud Hopkins or David Jacobs, and it's pointing a clear arrow. There's an arrow, right? You can take all of these cases and throw out the ones that are one-offs and keep all the other ones that have similarities. And all of a sudden, you create a trajectory of what exactly is happening. And it seems like, yeah, there is this hybridization program that's been happening for a very long time. And, you know, to what extent, or you know, why that is exactly, I think remains nebulous. I think we're not told. I don't think we'll ever be really told the truth about that. I don't even think the government's really told the truth about that. But it is occurring. And I think, you know, for me, the question becomes, when this time does come for disclosure, perhaps with a big D, are we going to address that? Is that even going to be talked about? I don't think it is. I don't see it as being talked about. I think that's probably one of, like you said, one of the darkest parts of all of this. And there are people out there who believe that this, whatever's happening, is 100% completely benevolent. And I think, I think you should use caution with that, because if you listen to these experiencers, these experiences for the most part are never pleasant. And, it just becomes a greater conversation when we start talking about that. And again, if you go to a doctor, and the doctor, your child, you go to a doctor, the doctor, he, before putting you under anesthetics, he knows the risks of the operation that he's about to do. He knows that you could die on this operating table, but that's not what he's going to tell you. He's going to say everything's going to be fine, right? And even though he's lying, he's doing it for the greater good, right? So it's really hard to know the motives behind these abductions, because we can be told one thing, it's actually another, or maybe the answer is just so hard for us to fathom with this human interface that we wouldn't even know how to process it or where to put it. But I do think it's valuable that we have these conversations more and more and get ahead of the curve. Because right now, as the government's starting to catch up to a lot of the UFO community, in the sense that, okay, people are looking up in the skies for the first time in a long time. They're actually taking pictures of Venus and being like, what is that? There are people looking up, and I think that's great. But as that movement occurs and moves forward, I think it's up to us in the community to start even, going a little bit further and start digging at this abduction phenomenon. Because I do think if you have tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people, these are people willing to talk about it, mentioning these ongoing experiments or programs, I think that it's worth listening to.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chris, but do you think that it's a case of we've stopped talking about it because it's being deliberately suppressed, or have we stopped talking about it because it's not happening as much, or is
From
it
what I
not
hear,
being
it's still
talked
happening.
about? It is still happening, from what you hear.
Yeah, I think it's getting less attention because it doesn't fit the narrative. And I think, again, the masses are caught up to a certain point. To hit them with abductions right now, I think would be a bit of a deterrent as to what they're trying to establish. They're just creating a ground floor with this, introducing the word UAP and making it very digestible and easy to sort of process. Throwing in that, oh, we're stealing people out of their beds, like that's just wild.
So
nobody wants to hear that.
We're in like kindergarten here. We got to get to, that's like master's degree level stuff.
Yeah, but it's up to us to like start having those conversations, because they're catching up to you guys, to to what you guys are saying and seeing and perceiving. So how do we take that information and disseminate it across our channels in a way that doesn't completely make the topic look insane, that still, remains relevant to the conversation that's happening with the general population? Like, how do we integrate that? And I think that that's where we're starting to go towards. I think that conversation needs to happen eventually. We got to start somewhere. And so with people like, the people you've mentioned, even Randall and so many others, and Bledsoe, I mean, these are real stories that have immense consequences on the human, species. And so it's great that we're at least, acknowledging it, talking about it a little more openly. I know that this wasn't a subject that you could even bat an eye towards, because it was just, you would end up being ostracized for even mentioning it. So it's nice that we're in that space that we can at least start having that conversation.
It's interesting to watch if you go back and look at some of the old media from like the early 90s and 80s of how they addressed this topic on talk shows. Daytime talk shows was kind of like the thing at the time, and it's really awkward it's like they really just make these people in front of a live studio audience just feel like fools, and you
Like
can
the Bud
see them.
Hopkins clip and
The Bud Hopkins stuff on Oprah, and
yeah.
I just thought, as you watch it, you're like, these people are clearly distressed. Like they're clearly suffering from a tremendous mental overload. Like they have no idea who to go to. How do you even talk about something like this? And here they are in front of a room full of people, and they're kind of getting this chuckle. And it reminds me of like, as a community, I think it's important that we all keep in mind they being whoever's in control of this narrative or has been for so long has really made it policy to dissuade people from talking about it by making it intentionally silly and over the top and just seem like outlandish.
Yeah.
So we have really entered in that sense a new era, because we can have a community like this that can discuss these things at length and in a nuanced way, respectfully. I wonder, did you follow David Jacobs at all?
Yeah.
Any of his work? Did you ever see that interview he did with Richard Dolan where he's like really freaked out at the end, and he's like, I don't know what kind of world my kids are going to grow up in. He's so freaked out. He's like, we need to be on
terrifying.
this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We need to have everybody that claims to be an abductee. We need to be studying these people. These are the ones that have been on board these craft. They can tell us what's going on. And he seemed really alarmed.
Yes.
According to him, I mean, they're even among us, right? So
Right.
I guess be on the lookout for that, I suppose. I don't know. Like that's
Right.
even just a wild thought. And not to mention, like that's the physical aspect of it that we keep hearing about as well. But there is this astral, metaphysical aspect of abduction as well that is, I think, to be, studied. There are people who claim their body didn't move, but they got pulled into like something. And even looking at that and like the whole astral projection and out of body stuff, which is very real. I've experienced it. I don't know what to make of it myself, but it seems like there's a whole other dimension to this conversation that is even goes even further and deeper into the topic and touches on a lot of this consciousness work that that Birdie does as well, and that so many other researchers have done. Where you look at Rupert Sheldrake or Dean Radin or even Dr. Powell, and recently with the telepathy tapes. And I mean, this is all connected somehow, and I think it's just so cool to see that we're having these conversations and that they're getting picked up on, even on Netflix, even if what they're saying on Netflix isn't exactly all flattering or true all the time. We're talking about it, and that's really cool to see. And I guess it's just like I said, up to us, up to the community to help foster an environment that is conducive to people coming forward with these stories.
Birdie, I want to ask you, what do you think, as someone who has done the type of work that you've been doing for as long as you have a unique insight into what's going on that most people aren't even aware of, and so I imagine you've got you've gotten pretty close to this. What is your take on this? I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable spot, but there seems to be a debate within the community, I think this is fair to say, about whether or not what we're dealing with is benign or dangerous or multiple things, all of the above, or if it's all love and light. How should we position ourselves for contact when that moment, if that moment does happen, when it happens? As a remote viewer and somebody who's spent so much time in this subject, what is your assessment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we have a tendency to anthropomorphize the phenomenon from, whatever the species, whatever the encounter, whatever the story, the report, the photograph, the video. We tend to look at it through our human eyes or human experiences and assign human values to it, which I don't think is necessarily in line with whatever these different aspects of the phenomenon really are about. So I don't think that it's helpful to label them in terms of benevolent or malevolent. I think it's a combination of all these things. I recently, I don't know, 6 months ago, I was really thinking about all these kinds of questions, and I wanted to see how like the gray aliens, these are, the aliens that show up in these classic abduction cases. I wanted to see it from their minds. And I set up a little project and I did a bunch of remote viewing looking at it from their perspective. So not from the perspective of the abductee or the outside observer, but from the person doing the abducting. And it was so fascinating because there was no ill will. There wasn't any, I would say, kindness either. It was just matter of fact. And it seemed to be something that the gray aliens or whatever you want to call them, felt was exceedingly important, not only for themselves, but for humanity. So to them, they're doing something altruistic, whereas to us, it's something terrifying. So I think we have these different kinds of competing narratives going on in all this space. I definitely am not aboard Team Space Brother and Sister, and I'm not aboard they're all evil either. I think it's a combination of all different kinds of motivations and understandings, some of which probably operate on levels that we cannot even comprehend, levels of consciousness that are so different than ours, that we're just looking at a small, thin layer, thin slice of what's actually happening, when some of this experience might be happening on levels way up here or way down here that we can never quite figure out. So I think it's complicated.
That's a good point. I think about, like, what is it? The horseshoe crab has this blue blood that we literally, you can Google this. They take horseshoe crabs and they put them in a lab and they actually drain the blood out of these horseshoe crabs and it comes out like neon blue. It's very weird. And I think it's a anticoagulant, or there's some kind of a chemical substance in the blood that we use for medical purposes. And I always, whenever you see a picture of it or a video of it being done, it's super weird. And I think, like, imagine the horseshoe crab trying to understand what's going on. It gets pulled out of the water. Now it's in a lab. It's got an IV pulling out its blood into a tube. There's people in white lab coats walking around. Like, it would just be madness. And I think to try and explain, what an abductee or an experiencer goes through, it's just, there's so many different things at play. And it's such a, for lack of a better term, such an alien thing to try and imagine. It's so out of our day-to-day realm of experience. To try and even put it into words, so much gets lost.
There was a documentary on this indigenous tribe. I believe it was New Zealand, but I could be mistaken. And this was, I think, back in the 50s or 60s. They'd never been contacted by modern human before. They were completely cut off. And you get to see their first interaction with a modern person. And it is absolutely terrifying to them because they're seeing someone who kind of looks like them. Even their facial structures are different. Their skin color is different. Their height's different. The clothes, the technology, their loud vehicles, and then they have planes. It is so wild how they, like, you see they're shaking. They can barely talk. Some of them are catatonic.
Is this the one where there's a I think he was like a French anthropologist who's trying to, like, he's trying to keep them away so they don't get sick. He's yelling. He's like, stay away, stay away. They're trying to cross the river. Have you seen that clip?
Yeah, I've seen that one, but this is one much older. And it really documents their first interaction from a distance. And yeah, afterwards, they're even interviewed later because they eventually bring in airplanes and they explain that, oh, we're just people, we're from over here. But it is exactly, I think, on a different scale, what that would look like. It's fascinating. Like, they can't fathom what they're looking at. It's so foreign and so bizarrely different. And it frightens them to their core. It absolutely paralyzes them.
I've seen the clip of, I don't know who it was, but he showed them a handheld mirror. And yeah, they looked in the mirror and they were like, whoa, what the fuck is that?
There was a clip that is available. It's out there on YouTube, and I couldn't tell you where to find it, but if you look hard enough, you'll find it. It's Linda Moulton Howe, and she's talking about an interview she did with a guy who claimed to be an intelligence officer who was in the room with an ET, with a what did she call it at the time? They called it a
EBE.
EBE. You know which one I'm talking about?
I do.
And
I do.
it's so chilling. It's chilling because, well, for one, she's just a great storyteller. So she has this there's the gravitas to the way she explains the story, but she's telling the story and she's like, I interviewed this man and he was this older gentleman. I don't know how old he was when she did the interview, but she described him as like this very put together, squared away military guy who is just like all business. And she's saying this story about, he was telling a story about he was introduced to an EBE and they brought him into the room with this being, and he's told by his superior officer, he's like, you are going to freak out. Like your whole body is going to want to run away from this situation. You're never going to experience anything like this, and you just need to go into this room and like take it. The way she describes it is like, you got to just sit there and deal with it. And she's like, you're gonna walk into the room and it's gonna be there, and you are gonna look at it and think it's a cartoon. It's gonna walk like a duck and it's gonna make you want to laugh, but then you're gonna panic. And she's describing like all of the phases that you're gonna go through, this emotional experience of how it's gonna go down. And it's really strange to hear because it's so visceral and it's so real. And you think like, especially in our culture today, like how would we actually handle it? Like, you've got people on YouTube would try to like, have it come on their podcast or like what, how would we're so weird today. Like, how would we handle it? But can you imagine like the reality of just standing in the room with something that's so different that your whole nervous system is on red alert and it's all you can do to not black out. Like they've got to train people for this. They've got to teach people how to do this. And I just thought that story was so interesting. And then there's this, of course, the famous case of Dan Burish, Dr. Dan Burish, who we've done videos on this channel about. And he describes being in the room with what's it called?
J-Rod.
J-Rod. And he's like, it was fear. He was like, I was just completely overcome with fear. I thought I was looking at an insect. I didn't know what I would, or an old world ape. And you can see it in his face. He's just like shaken up about it. And the emotional impact of it has got to be as extreme as anything that you could imagine. I can't imagine anything else being close to that. How do they prepare people for that? Or can we be prepared for that?
I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. I think that it's just going to be a shock to everyone. I think, they talk about ontological shock where, everything in your whole life becomes unpended because you're faced with something that's completely outside of your experience. And I think that even for those of us who have been following this our entire lives, if you still come face to face with something completely non-human, I think it would still shock you to your core. There's a difference between belief and knowing. And that difference can be an entire gulf of meaning. And I think it's easy for those of us who have been following this, who are like on board with all of this, I still think we're in for some shocking surprises.
Yeah, I agree. I sent Xander the clip. It's called First Contact.
I've got it queued up if you want to watch.
Yeah, the day the plane came. And it is, you get to see, especially towards the end, but you'll see like when the plane comes in and people, they're hiding their faces. They're like, it's completely terrifying to them.
I'm happy to show it, Clint, if you're cool with that.
Let's do it. Let's look at this.
All right, let's have a look.
I love this music.
For several years, the Lays searched the highland valleys for commercial quantities of gold. They were unsuccessful. They began using aeroplanes on their prospecting expeditions, flying out over unknown country to survey the land before venturing in by foot. It was on one such flight that the Lay brothers first looked down on the Wagi, the biggest valley of them all. Soon after their flight, the Lays walked into this valley, and here at last they discovered gold. They set up their final base camp, surrounded by 250,000 more people whose existence had not even been suspected by the outside world.
There were not so many around the first day, but the next day there was a big crowd arrive. They were all in one long line, and they'd come in with the food and sugar cane and stuff like that, and to show that they were friendly and they wanted to trade with us. But I think they did think that we were something a bit more than ordinary human beings. It wasn't very long before we had more food than we ever could hope to use. And they were bringing more and more. You couldn't stop them because they just went wild after the trade. The beads we had and the shell and the axes. Of binoculars, and I was watching for the aeroplane, and I picked it up about 20 minutes before it landed. And then I said, well, here it comes. They were more or less terrified, didn't know what it was.
To put it bluntly.
How did you really feel? I think people are going to lose their fucking minds, and I think it's going to be crazy for a while. And I have a feeling that because we've just never experienced this as a species. We don't know what it's like to be in the presence of something that is so vastly superior to us. We've never felt that. We're used to being in charge. Like, we go anywhere we want. We want to stop a river, we build a dam. We want to, you know, we can burn down the rainforest. We'll drop nuclear bombs on cities. Like, we're used to being large and in charge, and we have an attitude. And I wonder if it will psychologically just break people to realize that it's like, dude, you're not the top of the food chain for real. And not only that, but now you've got to coexist with this knowledge forever. And there's no turning it back. And you'll never know if you're really in charge of your own affairs as a species. You'll never really know, because they're smarter than us. They can do more than us. They could be running the whole show from behind the scenes. We would never really know.
I have a sense that it might be a case of the fact that most humans, especially in the Western world, don't ever get the experience of the fight or flight response in terms of really encountering, let's call it, a predator that is above them. That might be the reason for just the outright, like the fear that we could experience when we see this. Is just when we're in the presence of something that is just so far beyond us. It might even just be an instinctual response. Birdie, I know you've got to go soon. I did have one last question for you. So Lou Elizondo has outright said in recent months that to people that have attended some of his talks that they will see disclosure, and these are some older people. I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying. They will see disclosure in their lifetime, and you know, Chris Bledsoe has said 2026. We've had Danny Sheehan talking about two things. He's talked about nuclear war, and he's talked about climate change. Your remote viewing specifically mentioned the sun several times, and there was a large amount of focus on that for quite some time. I know that took place maybe a couple of weeks ago now. Have you had time to think about what that might mean? Is it an additional potential event that we need to maybe think about? What's your sense that some sort of cyclical solar eruption or something might play a role in disclosure.
Yeah, I think that there was something there to that. The non-human intelligence in my session was hyper focused on the sun and what the sun is doing right now. And I drew what looks like maybe a solar flare coming out of the sun or a coronal mass ejection, a CME coming out of the sun. And they seemed extraordinarily interested. And I got this sense, I even put like a Battlestar Galactica quote in my session. It has happened before, it'll happen again. The sense of cycles, that there was something important here, that they were here because of this cycle. And I kind of wonder, I've been thinking about it a lot, trying to figure out why. Why is the sun so important to them? It didn't seem like the military guys in my session gave a flip about what the sun was doing at the moment. But these guys, whoever, whatever they are, artificial intelligence or, some kind of sentience of some sort, elemental sentience, they were very fixated on it. And it was this idea that there's something broken, some kind of connection that's broken. And I'm thinking maybe we're going to have a solar event. We are reaching solar maximum. We're headed right into that, where I know here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, you never see the aurora borealis. We're way too far south for that. However, a few months ago, when we had those solar flares and the CMEs that came out toward Earth, and people were seeing solar auroras in places that they don't normally see them, my sky was purple and shimmery that night. We had an aurora borealis here, which was crazy, crazy. I took photos of it and everything. And that was like a small level, very small level in terms of, solar flares. It wasn't anything that like produced the Carrington event. It was like an X2, X3 or whatever. And a Carrington event is an X-class solar flare at the time they are estimating something like X86. I don't know the exact number, but way high up there on the scale. But our planet, our magnetosphere that protects us from the sun has been weakened. It's been weakening, which means that these solar flares and any kind of CMEs that come toward us are affecting us on a greater level. So I think there is the potential for some kind of major disruption. And maybe they're here to watch it. Maybe they're here to help stop it. I'm not really sure, but there was a heavy interest by them in it. Yeah.
Birdie, do you just before you go, how can the average person who is curious about remote viewing and who is curious about the nature of consciousness and who wants to expand their understanding of this, where should they begin? And how can they learn more about what their abilities are, and how can they explore this?
Yeah, well, I have on my YouTube channel a free 3-hour workshop that teaches you the very beginning basics. And there's some exercises. And by the end of that, you will be remote viewing. And there are plenty of trainers all around the planet that offer classes. I'm teaching a class in January. You can find all kinds of information about remote viewing at my website, norivets.com. And I've got a lecture series. I got a manual on how to remote view that you can download for free. And that might be a good jumping off place, but there are lots of resources out there. There is a website, remoteviewing.links. That's not my website. That belongs to somebody else who's keeping kind of an archive of interesting information where people can find out more about the history and the Stargate program and who's active in the field and what they're doing. That's another great resource too.
And we've linked to your YouTube channel in the show notes for this episode. So if anybody is interested, which you should absolutely be, please go to Birdie's channel, become a subscriber and support what she's doing. Take a look, comment, get involved in that conversation. And, remember, for those of you who don't know much about remote viewing, or if you haven't looked into it, if you're interested in UFOs and ufology and UAPs and NHI, I'm telling you, Hal Puthoff is at the center of this whole thing, and he's been a part of it all the way back to the very beginning. And he is. He is. Can talk about real quick before you go. Can you talk about why he's so significant to remote viewing?
Yeah, he was one of the people that helped design the program the Stargate program. He was there every single step of the way. His hand is still in the pot. And many say that he is also responsible for a lot of what's happened in the secret programs that are involved in reverse engineering. James Fox just came out with a fantastic documentary called The Program, which talks about this secret program that exists out there, government adjacent, in these secret groups where they're collecting crash retrieve saucers and other kinds of things, reverse engineering. They've got the alien bodies. And Hal Puthoff is at the center of all of that. And James interviews Hal on camera, and Hal admits he pretty much knows everything, but he can't say a word because of non-disclosure agreements that he has signed. He is a well-connected guy. Super well connected, and he believes that it's important, that remote viewing is an important part of understanding this phenomenon. So he knows.
He's at the center, or very close to it. That's for sure. Someone to watch.
Yes.
Birdie, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today and walk us through remote viewing and what's going on in New Jersey. I'd love to have you back and get some more insight from you.
Thanks, guys. I had a wonderful time, and I wish I could stay longer, but I just enjoyed every minute. You guys are a lot of fun, and this was a fantastic, interesting, thought-provoking conversation. So thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Birdie.
Okay, thanks.
We'll have you back.
Okay,
All right.
sounds great.
Xander, we're at the top of the hour. I've never been able to say that before. At the top of the hour, do you want to take a break for like 3 minutes and play another track for these folks who have been so patiently waiting to hear this album?
Do you have
we can all go refill our
request song wise?
Ooh, I like Element 115.
All right, we can play Element 115.
Or should we go with Epic Disclosure? That's more cinematic.
It is, yeah, we can go with a cinematic track, sure.
Okay, Epic Disclosure.
All right, here it is. I have to apologize. I think I actually muted myself from much of that track, mainly.
Oh, it was so good, guys. It was so
It's
good.
a shame.
I think people were like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, never mind. But yeah, like I've been dealing with a little bit of illness, and unfortunately, my daughter's very ill as well. So, I'm gonna have to go pretty soon, Clint. If that's okay with you.
Of course. Take care of your daughter. Take care of yourself. We'll keep the home fires burning. If anything happens, we'll call you.
All right. Let me set you up so that you can continue on with the conversation. Just bear with me a second. So we've also got Patrick Berlincat, who has joined now. They
Loud
will
and
hear
clear.
you in a second. Just bear with.
Hang on a second, Patrick. We're going to get you squared away here. 1 second.
There you go.
I think people were confused. They thought we were wrapping the show, but we're actually going
I
into
do
the
apologize,
last
guys.
hour.
That was just, me in my very tired state, really struggling.
Xander's wiped out.
Xander, the music's awesome.
Than't you very much. Anyone
Yeah,
that
it's great.
obviously didn't hear that, you can just go and check it out on Spotify, and you can listen to it in your own time.
Clint knows I'm a musician too, so I was thinking maybe we could collaborate and do a super group called Choir in the Sky. What do you think? How do you? I'll do all I do is sing and play acoustic guitar like a sixth grader, so you could do the rest. But
Sounds
I
good.
love it.
All right, guys, I'm going to have to go because, I need to really be family man right now.
Do it. That's your first mission.
All right. Have a great Christmas, everyone. I won't see you before the New Year. But yeah, have a great Christmas. Have a great New Year. Go and check out the album. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Music. All of that. So, yeah.
Thanks, Xander.
All right. I'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Xander.
We're good.
And guys, you can go to the Ko-Fi link in the show notes and drop Xander a donation, or you can contribute to the fund there to support his work as an artist, as a musician who's going to be putting together much, much more amazing music, hopefully for us very soon. So if you want to help out, that is a great way to do it. And go listen to the album if you haven't heard it yet. Of course, we mentioned this at the top of the show, but I think it's worth dropping in the middle. It's available everywhere fine music is streamed. You can find it on YouTube Music. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple Music. I've listened to it on all of them. They all sound amazing. All sound great. So go there and like the songs, pick out your favorites, and let's see if we can get some ears on those. And with that, I'd love to welcome our next guest. Patrick Berlincat is here. Patrick, how are you doing, man?
doing all right. I'm going through a weird phase with this mustache. Looks terrible on camera, so I apologize. But I'm not shaving to this until we have some answers.
What do you mean it looks terrible? It looks great.
All right, yeah, it's kind of. So yeah, it might be for the long haul here until we get some answers on the drone. It's my drone commitment.
That's the drone stash.
The drone stuff. That's right.
That's great.
Is a drone member?
You're gonna look like an old cowboy by the end of this thing. At the rate this is going.
Yeah, in 10 years, it's going to be like a Guinness record braided stash. So we'll see. But
well, thanks for carving out some time on Friday to come hang out with us, man. It's great to see you.
Yeah, I have just 20 minutes. I thought I'd maybe pop in and talk about what's going on with the app thing.
Yes.
In relation to the drones. And
well, for those of you who don't know who Patrick is, in addition to being an extraordinary musician, extremely talented, he's also a UFO nerd like the rest of us, and he's quite technically gifted, and he's put together something that is really awesome, an amazing resource for the community, and it's the UAP tracking map that we talked about on the show it's been a few months now. But since that episode, it's been upgraded, it's been enhanced, it's been improved in a number of different ways. Patrick, can you tell us explain for people who don't know what it is, how does it work, why is this map different, and what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's called Above Us. So aboveus.io. It's an app and a website, so it basically scrapes. I'm a Google Ads specialist. I've been doing this for 15 years, unfortunately, in digital marketing. A few years ago, I started running experiments with Google Ads to see if I could learn new things about people and not sell them crap and products and services. So I run ads to people who search Google. Why there's no searches in New Jersey, and I I came up with two possible explanations. This app, due to bandwidth issues, only tracks the top 10,000 cities in the U.S. and it only tracks UAP and UFO searches. So I was thinking one of two things were happening. Maybe these searches are not happening in these big Jersey cities, then it wouldn't be on the map, or people are so influenced by the news right now that no one's typing in UAP or UFO anymore, which is an issue for my app if drone becomes interchangeable with UAP, but that's another conversation. But I was wondering if either people were searching from Jersey cities that are small, or they're typing in, I saw a drone and I saw a UAP. So to fix this situation, I opened a whole other Google Ads account and I targeted the whole state of New Jersey. So every single zip code everywhere. And I bought the keywords, I saw a drone, report a drone, everything. And still, I have notes here like an amateur. Hold on. 60. I'm only seeing 60 searches a day now from all of New Jersey, which is still weird. That's all I'm saying is it's weird. There should I being in search engine marketing for 15 years, I know how people search and their behavior. There should be thousands, and there are thousands of searches a day based on how inundated we are in the media with this. Thousands are happening, but I'm only seeing 60 a day. So what I think is happening, I'm not 100% sure, but I Google might be deeming this topic in New Jersey as a sensitive event, which in digital marketing, when there's like a real world event, Google doesn't want to get embarrassed or put in a weird situation by being seen as profiting from a sensitive event. They did the same thing with so many different things over the years. With COVID, you used to be able to run ads on COVID searches. I used to do that. Then it gets to such a magnitude where they don't want to be embarrassed and called out for profiting off of these things. And a sensitive event is triggered and you could barely serve ads anymore. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but I think that's what's going on in New Jersey. It's a sensitive event and they're shutting down all ads, a lot of the ads. They're throttling it. So I just wanted to talk about that. It's just very weird. And yeah, since then I'm targeting the whole United States in a separate account, every city with all the drone keywords. And by the way, they're very expensive, which is weird.
So are you saying that you've created this system that is passive and is collecting data every time someone searches for drone sighting. I saw a drone, I saw a UFO, and you're saying that the data that you're getting back is not consistent with what is actually going on or what we think is going on based on what we're seeing on television.
To only see 60 searches a day in the entire state of New Jersey for these terms is very weird.
That is super weird.
I know how people search when there's events in the media, to say nothing of how inundated this event is. They're really, it should be and are at least thousands of searches a day, but they're not coming into my system because Google's throttling the ad from serving for the search, which is what I rely on to get the data. So I think they've deemed it a sensitive event, and they don't want anyone buying these ads because it looks bad for Google to someone searching for drones. And it's like, here's a paid ad for, they don't want to, I think that's what's happening in New Jersey, but it's only there. So
that's very strange.
It's totally fine. In New York City, I see a ton of searches. It's just weird. So, yeah.
Real quick, I'm sorry to cut you off, Patrick, but Chris, I know you've got to bounce here in a minute. Is there anything you wanted to say before you roll?
Not really. I just think that's an incredible thing you're doing, Patrick. Very, yeah. I mean, looks super cool. Very avant-garde. I love the idea. I like that you're tackling it from a new angle that clearly seems smarter and more optimal for this type of thing, and definitely something I'll keep an eye on as well as I guess more of these sightings occur worldwide. Are you targeted only in the United States, or is that something that reaches outside?
Yeah, I've expanded as of yesterday afternoon. I expanded to the entire U.S. and it's cost prohibitive because when people search for these terms, my ad triggers, and that's the mechanism for the so-called impression to pass into my system. But whether they click the ad or not, I see that they searched, but people inevitably click. And what I was saying just before is these drone keywords are shockingly expensive per click. They're like almost $10. So that means there are other advertisers buying all these drone keywords up, which is also super weird.
So there are, do you think there are people just capitalizing and trying to sort of sell their Amazon, supply? Yeah.
Quite possible. The only other competitor that I know of, because I see them, I'm able to see the biggest competitors in Google Ads, and Enigma I'm fighting with them, but the prices it's very high for these terms. It's very strange.
So Enigma is spending big coin on these terms.
Oh yeah.
Where are they getting their funding?
It is $10. They're spending $10 a click on, and it's not cheap. So that's just to answer your question. That's why it's not worldwide, because the ad's going to show way more, and then it's $10 a click worldwide for, that's, a 5-figure budget. It would be tough, but it is possible to do worldwide, but just due to the cost, it's US only as of yesterday. So I'm curious how this pans out. And the last thing I wanted to mention, even if this turns out to be, not aliens, and I don't want to speculate at all on this, but if it turns out to be sniffing for nuclear material, then this map becomes, a heat map of where the drones are most populating. So I think that's useful if it doesn't get the FBI to front flip through my window. And and I love your show. If anything happens to me, I love your show. If I'm jogging and something happens to me, I'm probably going to die with a night shift hat on. So
how do you like your hat?
I do. I'm rocking it.
Right.
But yeah, now it's getting a little worrisome for me. I have anxiety talking about this now, because now it's getting
really?
Yeah, I'm like, it's just getting weird because, the app has a function, as you see, if you do download it, like you can overlay all the nuclear sites in the U.S. and military sites and how the sightings are approximate to it. But now that the question of what these drones are might be so sensitive, getting a little weirded out about it. But yeah,
that's really interesting that you put it that way, because Liberty Wing in UK is here with us, and he's been getting footage above the sky above the base at Lakenheath, RAF Lakenheath, and a few weeks ago had his whole YouTube channel taken down because of the footage he was getting of these lights in the sky. And he says that the vibe on the ground there is super weird. The people are just nervous.
Yeah,
that's fair, Liberty?
Yeah, and I think people are saying that their YouTube channels are being suppressed as well, and I think mine is. I don't think I'm getting the views I should be getting, and for that one time, I think that first night I had 70,000 views in like an hour. Now I can't get nothing, and I know how to do YouTube, so it doesn't seem like nothing's being pushed around that subject. And other YouTube channels have told me exactly the same thing. So yeah.
And that's a Google product, so yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It would. Oh man, this gets so much weirder.
I didn't mean to jump so early, but I got something coming up. But I wanted to jump in and just update you on that. And the last thing I want to say is I am worried this app's going to get taken down now. So just going to try to keep pushing it and try to expand this. I don't know how to incorporate the drone stuff into this app just yet. It's a technical challenge because it's just UAP and UFO keywords, but we'll figure it out.
Well, let's get you back on when you've got some more time and we can dig into this a little more deeply. But the aboveus.io is the website, guys. If you want to go there and check it out, aboveus.io, and the app is also called Above Us. You can get there through the website, right?
Unfortunately, it's not on Android because the technical challenge is getting on Android. We need 20 beta testers. So if you have an Android and you want to be one of these testers, that would be amazing. But I'm having a challenge getting these 20 testers, but it's only on iOS for that reason. So I apologize.
Well, this is awesome. I'm going to, we'll get everybody to go there. Aboveus.io is the website. Please go there, check it out, and familiarize yourself with it because, hey, guys, this community is about, if it's about anything, it's about trying to get to the bottom of this for ourselves. If we wait around for the government to give us information, we'll be waiting forever. So sooner or later, we got to put boots on the ground and just do this thing. And Patrick, you've done some excellent work. You've really just made this.
You too, man.
Thank you for doing this, man.
All right, have a great holiday, guys, and I'll talk to you. I'll talk, Clint. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. We'll see you.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Patrick.
Bye.
Chris, are you out too?
Yeah, I'm going to get some work done. Thank you, gentlemen, for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on and, lending me the platform. Appreciate it, as always.
Thanks for being here, man. Thanks for the great insight. It's always great to talk to you. You've always got a fresh take on this whole thing, and it's really cool to hear your thoughts on this.
Appreciate it. Happy holidays, everybody. Take it easy.
All right, man.
Tip.
Good.
So, Liberty, how are you doing on time?
Yeah, I'm all right.
You got a little more time?
I'm good.
How big is the community of people who plane spot like you do with gear and actually are out there looking at this stuff all the time?
Quite a few, to be honest with you. It's got quite popular recently, and I actually, when that all happened, I had this little bit of like your guys came in, and some other channels came in. And my sort of like group of people, they didn't seem like they were interested in the UFOs, but they're actually starting to turn around now, and they're all like coming up there and looking at it as well. So they've gone from looking at the planes to looking at the sky for other things, and it's a really strange thing that's happened now. And I can see a couple of the people in the chat. And one of them's one of my admins, and he's the same thing. We all go there, and I go there to look at the airplanes. I've seen all these things, and other people have come there while I've been streaming purely because they know what's happened and they want to come and see it. So, yeah, the community is definitely there's a big community for plane stuff, but this thing on top it's really Lakenheath's got really, really busy. It's like every night I go there, there's always people there now, whereas there never used to be that many there. So, it's definitely kicked it off.
It's kicked it off, and I wonder how much how are the drone laws in the UK, for example? Like over here, it seems pretty permissive. Like people can just send stuff up wherever, more or less. Like, is it same over there or?
There's a few rules on size of drone you can fly, I think, and I think you have to go and do a test and stuff if you have a bigger drone than I think it's 250 grams or something like that. I'm not so sure exactly, but obviously there's height limits and things like that, and you can't fly them near a base. They won't take off. This is the thing, if you go near Blake and Heath, you couldn't put your own drone up if you wanted to. So they won't allow it. Won't allow it. The apps won't allow it. So yes, to see that all that stuff going on, like everybody to start with, everybody was looking at it thinking, what is actually going on here? What is going on? And then it was hearing all these things, and it just went on for days. But then we had about 2 weeks of like non-stop cloud and rain, and you couldn't see anything. You couldn't see the planes after they took off, so there was no chance of seeing anything. And everybody kept saying, "Is there anything?" Well, I couldn't tell you because there was, we couldn't see nothing.
No visibility.
But I think last Sunday, I done a stream at home because me and my wife just stood at the back door and we saw some lights in the sky from here. And we're about 20 miles from Lake and Heath, and we saw these lights and we thought, wow, yeah, they look interesting. So I got my flight radar app out and I had a look, and there was nothing on there, like 1 or 2 planes in the vicinity, but there was 50 lights, I'd say, in the sky. And they just kept going backwards and forwards. So I streamed that all night long as much as I could. And that was really cloudy, but the lights were that bright. They were through the clouds. So that was last Sunday, I think it was.
We've seen a lot of weird videos of that. Like it looks like lights coming from inside the clouds. Is that have you seen these other videos where it looks like something glowing that they're flying through the cloud cover super fast?
These weren't moving fast. These were going along slowly, but one of them had the Lola lights on it. The reason I started streaming is that it had about 4 lights on the front of it, and it didn't look like a plane. It looked strange, so I quickly went and got my camera and said, "Well, I'll try streaming." And I hadn't set up I've never set up the camera here, so it took me a little while to get it going. Got it all up and running, and everybody kept saying, "Oh, there are planes going along the flight path." But I'm an astrophotographer, so I know my sky really well, and I've got an observatory outside, and I was watching all these lights, and I was thinking, well, they're not on the app. There was loads of them. They just kept coming backwards and forwards all night, and they weren't on no flight, no apps, nothing. Just 1 or 2. I think we saw, because everybody was checking. I think there was about 3 planes went over, and we must have saw 100 lights that night. So
all these lights, there's no transponders. This is just, they shouldn't be there.
No.
Like out of 100, there's 3 that that you can see in the app that should actually be in the air, and there's like 97 others.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there was loads, and so that made me think, well, maybe they are still going ahead, because we clearly couldn't see nothing because of the weather. But I went to Lake and Heath the next night, and I did see a few different lights that I couldn't explain. But then someone told me that a lot of military planes have been turning them off. They've been told to turn them off now. Why would they do that? So
that's a great question. Yeah, why would they do that?
Yeah, it doesn't seem right to me. But
so we've got Patrick saying that Google is the information he's getting back on his end from creating this map is really suspicious and weird. He seems to feel that there's something really odd or off going on that they are not talking about. Birdie seems to have the same idea from doing her RV stuff, and it seems like, from what we're seeing, like no one explanation really matches everything that we're looking at. We've got to wrap up the show here, and we're gonna end on this thought. I'm just wondering, like, as someone who's been in this community for a little bit, you've had some kind of close calls and weird experiences of your own. Your take one last time for everybody watching. Like, what do you take away from all this?
It's so difficult. It's so difficult. Is it a government-run exercise to get us used to something coming? Is it them preparing for something from another country and we're testing drones out? I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I can honestly say, hand on heart, I've seen some stuff in that sky that, I've been looking at the sky for a lot of years as an astrophotographer. They're not things I've seen before. So, it's, I don't know what it is. I'll leave it to the people's imagination, but yeah, I'm not going to say they're UFOs, but they're not they're not normal. It's weird. I wish we could see the lights that you guys have got. That's what I want. I want to see them here. They're not filming for you.
We got to bring you over here, and then you can go to New Jersey and see what's going on. We need somebody to tell us what's going on. No, nobody knows. Hey, man, Liberty, thank you again for taking the time to come hang out with us on Friday. It's great to catch up with you.
And you.
We'll have you back on. Hopefully, you'll have some more cool footage for us, and we can all see it together. Guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show there. Xander, I don't know if you're still with us. But
I am.
We're going to go ahead and wrap up a little bit early today, and we're going to leave you with one track, a final track off of the album. Xander, do you want to set it up?
Not a great deal to set up. It's the last track on the album. It kind of tries to encapsulate how I feel about the phenomenon personally. And yeah, to everyone that's listened to the album so far, thank you very much for the kind words that I've received. And yeah, this is sort of the way I communicate how I feel. It's the best way for me to communicate, my feelings about this whole topic. Seems to be the only way I know how. So I encourage everyone to explore their own creativity when it comes to this topic. Any sort of new mediums that we can come up with are going to be helpful to drawing new people into the topic. So yeah, this last track is called We're Not Alone. And yeah, always welcome to hear more thoughts about the album and stuff. So anything else, Clint?
That's it, guys. Thanks for being with us. It's great to see you all. We'll see you back here soon. And until then, keep looking up.
I'll make sure I don't mute myself this time.
Happy Christmas, guys.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.